I am John Armajani, Associate Professor of Theology at the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University. The sponsor of this evening's lecture is the J. Phillips Center for Interfaith Learning in collaboration with the Center for Global Education and Intercultural and International Student Services. It is an honor and a pleasure for me to introduce tonight's speaker, the Reverend Dr. Paul Haidostian, President of Haigazian University in Beirut, Lebanon. Reverend Dr. Haidostian's and my friendship dates to the late 1980s, when both of us were students at Princeton Theological Seminary. I have very positive memories of our many conversations, often at the seminary's dining hall, about a broad range of topics, including Middle East politics, Christian theology, and life in the Middle East in the United States. Reverend Dr. Haidostian has generously supported me during my trips to Lebanon for field research, and he's done so in a variety of ways, including providing me his valuable insights about religion and politics in Lebanon and the Middle East, and also giving me his scholarly advice and numerous contacts. He has also hosted me at a broad range of events at Haigazian University, all of which were inspiring and informative. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Haidostian, for the many ways in which you have supported and encouraged me in my scholarly work. I am glad that you are here with us. Reverend Dr. Haidostian has been serving as president of Haigazian University since September 2002. He holds a BA in psychology from Haigazian College, which he earned in 1984, a Master of Divinity degree from the Near East School of Theology in Beirut, which he earned in 1987, a Master of Theology and a PhD in Pastoral Theology, which he earned in 1988 and 1993 respectively, both from Princeton Theological Seminary. His years as president of Haigazian University, an American-style liberal arts English language institution, have been marked by campus development projects in a central district of the capital city, the start of research projects, the completion of new staff, faculty, and business handbooks and manuals, the outreach of Haigazian University into diverse community interests, and much more. In addition to his local and international responsibilities in academic, ecumenical, and educational organizations, he extensively teaches, lectures, and writes in Armenian, Arabic, and English on a wide variety of topics related to the church, ecumenism, youth, and socio-political matters. In addition to taking him to Middle Eastern countries, his work regularly takes him to Armenia and also brings him to the USA. He describes himself as a person of community, both local and global. On an informal level, he considers that the joy of his presidency is to be part of the life of a diverse student body of 900 students from Christian and Muslim, Arab and Armenian backgrounds, of many religious sects and denominations in a region of turmoil and division. Helping create an oasis of peace on a small campus is his personal mission, as well as that of the university. In his capacities as professor, university president, and theologian, he has participated in numerous ecumenical dialogue teams, conferences, and efforts, especially through the Fellowship of Middle East Evangelical Churches, the Middle East Council of Churches, and the World Communion of Reformed Churches, to name a few. Reverend Dr. Haidostian is currently the chair of the Central Committee of the Union of Armenian Evangelical Churches in the Near East, in which numerous small congregations in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and other countries of the region are represented. Reverend Dr. Haidostian has received numerous awards and medals, including the Moses Khorenatsi Medal from the President of the Republic of Armenia in 2011. He is married to Maral, and they have two daughters, Garin, who is 20, and Talar, who is 15. The title of Reverend Dr. Haidostian's lecture this evening is Religious Diversity in the Middle East Today, a Blessing or a Curse. Please join me in welcoming the Reverend Dr. Paul Haidostian.
Thank you so much, Dr. Armajani, for your kind words and introduction. I'm really pleased to be here with you. And I'm especially pleased that we have a good number of students. I consider my friends on our campus, so are you here. And I thank the presidents of the institutions, President Hameseth and President Banninger, and Dr. Merkel for your hospitality and for your nice, warm welcome. Today was my only day on your campus. I loved it, especially appreciated the meetings I had, and in particular the lunch with the students. So if you're around those students, I really enjoyed our time together. As a child, growing up near the shores of the northern Lebanese city of Tripoli, the concept of religion to me was more a social reality than anything else. That is, a social reality rather than an ideological, political, or existential issue. My father was the pastor of a very small Armenian Protestant congregation and the principal of its elementary school of probably 80 students, more than half of whom were actually Armenian Orthodox, some Arab Orthodox or Catholic, and a few Muslims. If you're looking for me, yes, I'm there. The distinctions in my mind were between those kids with us who were physically clean or physically dirty, some easier to play with than the other students. I was interested more in the types of sandwiches they brought to school. Who came by car and who walked, and whose dad had what car? Who wore new sports shoes? Who sang well in school? Who memorized lessons with ease? And so on. Much was done in the Armenian language, and all religious expression in the school was Christian. Even the parents of the Arab Muslim children in the school were proud to mention to their society that their kids could say the Lord's Prayer in public in Armenian. Many of our neighbors were Arab Orthodox, Antiochian, let's say. Some were Muslim, and some were Armenian Christian. While our identity was Protestant ourselves in the family and ethnicity was Armenian, we waited with excitement for the feasts of the others. Fireworks at the St. George festivities of the Orthodox Church, the desserts and rich kinds of bread sold during the Muslim holidays, the Lenten chants of the nearby Maronite Catholic Church that they played on loudspeakers, the call to prayer of the mosques were daily realities we didn't even notice, just as we heard the bells of the 3 churches in our neighborhood. Now, who actually believed in what cosmic reality? Who read and memorized what sacred text? Who was socialized in which house of worship was really not on my agenda. But then, as a child, and as children, like the ideal members of the kingdom of God, children only focus on the basics, on beauty, on the beauty of things and of life, not on the overall differentiated, multifaceted human complexity we call civilization. Things change when we grow and as we dig deeper, and things changed for me as well. But it is not simply that I was the one who was growing up. I was growing up, so I was changing my mind about things. Truly, in the past decades, I have noticed that the role of religion in the Middle East has been changing. The role of religion in the Middle East has been changing, and the manners of religious expression have changed into narrower and less tolerant actualities, and the increasingly politicized and now militarized version of religion, mainly in parts of Islam, have been taking over. And these narrower approaches of Islam have been first victimizing the Muslims, and then the rest of the people, including the Christians. One may blame the Arab-Israeli conflict, later the Iraq War, and the subsequent radicalization of Islam. One can blame Western double standards and neo-colonial intentions. Another may blame the post-Cold War dynamics. Another may blame globalization and its impact on anthropology and ethics. Another may simply call it terrorism, as if terrorism were a virus of some sort, or this or that aspect of Islam. Yet another may call it the ongoing decay of morality among humans. Whatever the case may be, religious diversity, as we have known in the past, has now been more and more politicized and militarized in religion in the Middle East. And this has become a dangerous reality, something I never experienced in my childhood. So I come to lesson 1. As a child, you do not theorize on religion or its diverse expressions. You simply want to experience people as friendly, good, helpful, enjoyable, pleasant to play with, and responsive to your rapprochement. Now a few words on the religious landscape of the Middle East. The Middle East is known as the cradle of many civilizations, and especially as the birthplace of the 3 Abrahamic religions. Of course, chronologically, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Evidently and historically speaking, the Christian-Muslim divide is not a West-East reality. People often in the Middle East and in the West talk about Christianity and Islam as a Christian West and Muslim East. But it is not such a reality. In fact, we in the Middle East always see the two, rather the 3 religious traditions. At least we saw it up till the mid-20th century as coexistent and part of one social fabric. Religious conflict and violence had been witnessed from day one, but experiences of coexistence and relative harmony have also been widespread, something I cannot say about our current times in the 21st century. Monotheism, some major reference to Abraham in sacred texts, divine revelation to Abraham, and a moral understanding of life and faith are considered as common ground among these 3 religions, and they have kept the traditions close to each other also socially. This is Beirut today, the church and the mosque, as you see. Today, all the countries of the Middle East, almost all of the countries of the Middle East, are known to have a Muslim majority. Israel, Palestine to have a significant Jewish population alongside a sizable Muslim population and a tiny Christian minority, and Lebanon, where I live, has a significant Christian population alongside a Muslim majority. But there are also various influential and smaller religious traditions still. The Baha'is, the Zoroastrians, the Druze, the Sufis, the Yazidis, among others. In fact, most of the ancient religions of the Middle East are still there in the Middle East, in one way or another. In fact, I hope many of you will be able to visit the Middle East one day, simply to discover the religious pluralism and the richness and the diversity of the religious groups that go back so many centuries, all the way, in some cases, to the early days of the Christian faith. A further nuance with regard to the mainline religions. When we say Christian in the Middle East, we should understand that we refer to more than a dozen very well established, theologically, ecclesiastically, and structurally independent denominations that agree or disagree with each other on many grounds, and many, add to the traditional ones, many Protestant denominations some relatively large and others very small. For those of you, especially students, if you're interested, go check the website of the Middle East Council of Churches, MECC, and you will see dozens of organized traditional Christian denominations there. In most cases, among the Christians, relations are smooth and friendly, but adverse feelings that are based on some event or conflict in the past are also relived once in a while. In some cases, the divisions have been very deep among the churches. For example, we still in the Middle East, in a number of conferences, discuss the problems of the Council of Chalcedon, the nature of Christ. This is not a matter that belongs to the books. You still feel it in the Middle East. Or the relationship with Rome. It's still a big issue in the Middle East. Or sometimes the impact of Protestant missionary activity in the 19th century. But sometimes conflicts are also symbolic and a little funny. I'll show you the next photo. This is in the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. And this is a fight, almost an annual fight, between the Greek priests and the Armenian Orthodox priests. And the whole issue is who is going to clean the church before Christmas. Now, the one who cleans it, the one who gets to clean it, will prove that they have ownership. Why should you clean someone else's house of worship? So you will see the Armenians in the lower part and the Greeks there and so on. And this will be on Euronews, and this will be on a number of television channels. Okay, that's a light one. No one dies usually, you know. It's like folklore, take it. But it still tells you something about the nuances of these various Christian groups. In a parallel way, when we say Muslim in the Middle East, we mostly understand the two key schools of Sunni and Shia. Of course, the Sunni are a majority in North Africa all the way to the Gulf states, and the Shia maybe 10% of the Muslims in various places of Iraq, the Gulf, Lebanon, and of course Iran. But there are also dozens of smaller Muslim branches, orientations, and authorities within each religious group. Many of the divisions among the Muslims also have a political base, but over time, as always, the political divisions become social, ideological, theological, and spiritual. In our modern days, funding of small Muslim groups from various official and non-official sources is also a player that is not unifying, but rather divisive. The Muslims too enjoy a sense of unity. In fact, recently they've been celebrating a day of Muslim unity that I've noticed. But probably the sense of unity is not as the Christian concept of the one body of Christ with the one head and so on. But even with the Muslims, there are historical events that point to internal division that persist to this day. So when you say Christianity in the Middle East is very complex, Islam is very complex, basically each of the religions and then each of the religious denominations and sects in the region claim to own and present the truth in some exclusivity, but they also hold on to specific events or epochs of history and claim some geographical space as sacred and as religiously significant. This needs some parental guidance, but this is in a town called Nabatieh, city called Nabatieh in southern Lebanon, where the majority are Shia, and they are commemorating what is called Ashura. It's an event that happened in Islam in the year 680 AD, where the Prophet Muhammad's grandson, Hussein, was killed by a caliph. So that led to various divisions and so on. Since 680, this is still commemorated, and the martyrdom, this is actual blood. It's not paint or something. It's not a game. It's actually, in a very dramatic way, commemorated as if it happened yesterday. The events happened yesterday. And I could give you many more examples, but I'll stop there, which brings me to lesson 2. As a follower of any religious group in the Middle East, you find yourself bound to a place or a time where and when you are convinced history started for you, and you see all others as competitors, and often your group as victim and oppressed. In much of the traditional Middle East people's self-understanding and self-expression, we see religion playing a central role. It is the religious lens that decides so many things. Energy in the Middle East is not utilized to define and understand religion. Energy is used on how your religion defines you, socially and politically. In some sense, this should be good. Then religion is important. So that's good. But then it is complicated in the Middle East. When there is more than one religion, as is the case everywhere, or understanding of religion, what would you do? So in a place like Lebanon, we often notice that it is not the law that you obey, but you expect the law to serve your aims as a group. It is not the constitution that unites, but some additional agreement among the various religio-political or religious historical groups. It's not diversity and openness that's celebrated, but rather how you prove to your group that you are more truthful to the fundamentals of your type, or of your sect, or of your denomination. While this may seem to be exaggerated in my lecture, it's important to note that these trends have always been there, but they're getting more and more complicated and militant. The main problem is not only the complications of diversity among religions, but also among the subgroups within one religion, where all groups present themselves as threatened by almost everyone else. And today in the Middle East, many religious subgroups are in active war with each other. In some countries, in terms of military war, people of the same denomination, the same Shia, the same Sunni denomination, actively fighting against each other. And even in the Christian churches, much of the conflict that we see is within each denomination, is not among the denominations. So it brings me to lesson 3. Accepting diversity is not a challenge only among those who are different, but first and foremost among those who are similar. This may not be an easy topic. We may prefer the other to be different and in a conflict with us, but in practice, in most religious groups, it is what happens inside. Is diversity really a value to uphold? I'm aware that I'm doing this lecture in the USA, where diversity is very highly esteemed, even though I'm not sure that the American society has grasped all that such a concept entails. Because accepting diversity is a very serious issue. It could be a dangerous issue, but it's a very critical issue. In principle, diversity means complexity of all things. Just as there is not one discipline that explains all reality, there's no one discipline that explains all things in the world, and interdisciplinary work is always needed. Just as there is biodiversity and various life forms, just as a system in society or creation has multiple components, I would like to affirm that recognizing diversity is recognizing the nature of all life. Recognizing diversity is recognizing the nature of all life. In religious diversity, what interests me first is the following fundamental observation: how we deal with those in our group or our type of faith, and whether we have a fruitful way of handling internal diversity and then moving out into the others. That's what I find most important. So, lesson 4. By the way, I missed that photo. I was talking about the Christian diversity. The lower picture is a meeting of the Middle East Council of Churches. You see all sorts of denominational leaders there. And the picture up there is a prayer for unity. It's in one of the Armenian Protestant churches. From my side, you will see the president of the Protestant Armenian denomination. And then you will see the bishop of the Syriac Orthodox Church. The third one is the patriarch of the Armenian Catholic Church Global. The fourth one is the bishop prelate of Lebanon of the Armenian Orthodox Church. I believe the fourth is the Chaldean bishop of Beirut. Before the last is the pastor of the Congregational Arab Church in Lebanon, and the priest of the Greek Orthodox Church, the Antiochian Orthodox Church, is the last one. That's like they're doing the benediction together. And even physically, you should tell. If you go to an ecumenical service in the Middle East, you will see church history right before your eyes. So now let me go to lesson 4 I described. Diversity is a fact, a reality one has to recognize about all aspects of life, religious life included. So diversity is not this add-on. It is a matter of fact. You just have to recognize it. I have been involved in Christian ecumenical and interreligious dialogues of various sorts, and I have learned the following. Much of the popular interest among the people when they dialogue is in finding some common liturgical, ethical, economic, or political ground, rather than theological and ideological. Actually, a number of events I've attended or dialogues between Christians and Muslims, we ended up discussing politics and social issues because we realized, well, there's more that we could discuss on those issues than anything else. In many cases, dialogue has been failing in the world, and diversity is not respected and not valued. But how are the common people noticing that diversity doesn't work? They're noticing it through social norms and habits, like who eats in Ramadan and who fasts in Ramadan. Will the Muslim allow the Christian to eat during Ramadan? These are the types of issues people are interested in, and they're not necessarily interested in the bigger theological, anthropological issues that I had put for the biodiversity issue. I mean, I didn't want to put a religious picture alone. If diversity is part of all life, boy, they don't look like each other to me. Lesson 5. No matter how complex religious conflicts get, it is the habitual and social expression of religion that is highlighted more than anything else. Now, how you're thinking about the spirit, what you're thinking about creation is one level of discussion, but the common people of the Middle East, and I guess more than the Middle East, eventually care about how they could live their life with the others, on their street, in their schools, at the workplace, and in wherever it is. Now, in the past 11 years, I've been part of a small university community, 900 students, where almost half of our students are Muslim. The rest are Christian. It's a very diverse community. And in this diversity, we see lots of expressions. This is one of those examples. There are contradictions among these. I would say half of these would be Muslim. There are contradictions in many ways. There are differences among them. Belief, family background, political allegiance, clothing, covering the hair, or something else. And yet I have noticed that if people do not borrow and do not bring into the university the established conflicts of the outer world, and if they don't bring all these conflicts of the outer world into the campus, then they are able to create new worlds and realities and new relationships on campus and beyond. This requires that they not threaten each other, that they learn respect and share the positive of their background with the others. Share the positive with the other, and therefore learn from each other. Which brings me to lesson 6. The world is in need of positive examples. I'm just reading the lesson. The world is in need of positive and constructive examples. And we have to start where we are now. This is the lesson I learned as president for 11 years. I cannot wait for the rest of the world to sort out its religious problems or political conflicts. It will not happen. Maybe it will happen. I will not see it. But what can I do? The world is in need of positive and constructive examples, and we have to start where we are now. And this is what I believe our university tries to do, and many other institutions and efforts try to do this. Now, many people in the world do not do what they do together under the name of religion or religious diversity. They don't do it under the name of ideology or strategy, but they do it in the name of daily discipline. Being with each other today, supporting each other today, understanding each other today is a daily discipline, and it has to become a habit of your heart. Natural part of you. A concern I have developed over the past years is not to allow dialogue and the acceptance of religious diversity to mean apathy towards your own system. Not to allow dialogue to turn into apathy towards your own faith system or belief. Being in dialogue and accepting diversity should not mean the dilution of your commitments. Being in dialogue and accepting diversity should not mean neutrality in all things. The acceptance of diversity should not mean tastelessness. From a biblical example, a foot should be aware of its role as a foot, a hand as a hand, and confidently and positively to do that, to recognize its role, and then to realize that a foot is worthless if it is not part of the larger scheme of things. So that brings me, okay, we skipped it because of whatever it was. This is a photo from a couple of years ago. Do I have, does this help? No, no light there. Okay. The person on the top was the former, my side, General Secretary of the Middle East Council of Churches. The first gentleman, bearded, is the head of the Druze community of Lebanon. Behind him, with the eyeglasses, is the head of the Supreme Council of Protestant Churches in Syria and Lebanon. The next Muslim person is the head of the Shia community of Lebanon. Next to him is the head of the Sunni community, is the Mufti of the Sunni community of Lebanon. Next to him, in the red garments, is the former cardinal of the Maronite Catholic Church of Lebanon. Right behind him, with the glasses, is the current patriarch of the Maronite Church. Behind him, with the beard, is the head of the Presbyterian Synod of Syria and Lebanon. Next to him, I don't recognize, but it is a Syriac Orthodox priest. Next to him is the bishop of the city of Tyre, near the Israeli border, of the Greek Catholic Church, and so on and so forth. Now, but this belonged to the previous section that I was covering. Now I come to lesson 7. Appreciating diversity should not mean losing your allegiance and convictions and only then getting along with others. I hope you understand what I mean. Accepting others should not mean that I forget about who I am. Being able to work with others should not mean that what I have is senseless or worthless. Accepting diversity should not require also religious neutrality, that I don't care, all things are equal, and so on. They don't need to be equal, and you don't need to deny what's yours. in order to accept the diversity. And then there is much dialogue taking place today in the world, including interfaith, interreligious dialogue. It is very common in Egypt, Lebanon, Palestine, Israel, and Jordan to hear about teams, NGOs, and efforts of dialogue among the various faith groups. In some countries of the Middle East, governments sponsor many of these dialogue efforts. But most people remain in the elitist realm, and most of the dialogues are for the intellectuals and for the elitists, for the leaders of all groups, which is obviously not sufficient. Of course, there are also civil society people and local efforts and retreats and workshops among the young people who are trying to make peace amongst each other. These civil society matters are popular with the educated, young, and university people, and much of the funding comes from Europe, even from North American foundations and government. But most of these organized dialogues are very limited in their impact and outcome. In general, in my opinion, interfaith dialogue is not a major success of our contemporary times. I haven't noticed that interfaith dialogue has been making an impact on the streets within each country. It's making a difference in the life of those 12 people who are meeting. But then how does it translate into the street? I'm not able to see in our circles. Dialogue is more successful where there is no conflict. These conferences are successful where there are no problems. All the difference there is that they are of different religions, then dialogue succeeds. But then when there is conflict, and these people get together, like the problem of Kosovo, when the Yugoslavian problem happened, how did interreligious dialogue contribute to any solution? It wasn't interreligious dialogue that was, doing the miracle. Dialogue is more successful where there is no conflict, and it serves some purposes of our modern human civilization, but it doesn't seem to have an impact on the wider and deeper happenings of the world, the social issues and the economic dimensions. Dialogue is often criticized. Dialogue is often considered a luxury by people who are suffering. I'm suffering and you're talking is the type of thing that I've heard. Their need is action and solution to their suffering. People do not mind religious disagreements and conflicts as long as they're not suffering. They do not mind. Go and fight on religion as you like, but let me not suffer. This is really, boils down to this kind of a reality. What our world needs is work at the grassroots, in the homes, in the families, in the schools, churches, mosques, synagogues, the media, and then government, so that they may create awareness of the edifying role of religion. Once, while I was fundraising for our university here in the USA, I was asked by a potential donor an interesting question. She said, now, are you the authority with whom I should negotiate this, or are you going to also check with others? And I know why she's saying that. She wants to finish this thing there. She doesn't want me to say, okay, I'm going to tell my daddy about this, or my board, or something else. She wanted to know whether I'm the one who can act upon whatever it was. I think it's the same in the religious dialogue issue. Are the ones who are dialoguing the ones who control the streets? Are the ones who go into the efforts of interreligious living and acceptance of diversity, the ones who can have an impact on their world? If not, then it's an intellectual exercise for the elitists. And you can do it, in the books. We don't even need to meet. We could do it on Skype. In fact, where religion plays a mostly negative role in society is where religion is simply an ideology, an idea with which we control other people's mind. And if religion is not to be a life-giving depth and perspective in life, then we're not gaining anything, neither in our faith nor in our interfaith. This is Gibran Khalil Gibran, a philosopher, a writer, a Lebanese American poet, artist, who viewed religion as the depth of human personality, of the human personality. A matter, he said, of daily life. He saw religion as a combination of reflection and action. And this philosopher often criticized his own people when he wrote a poem called Pity the Nation. Now, students especially, maybe you've taken it in school, but take a note of this poem. It's a very nice one. If you haven't read it, please read it. It will help you. It has helped me in my life. But one of the statements that I find relevant for this discussion is, pity the nation that is full of beliefs, that is things to believe in, 1, 2, 3, 4, and void of or empty of religion. That is, the impact on life is not there. There are lots of things they believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, but then is it life-giving? Is it creating life? Is it creating peace? Is it creating love? And all the virtues that we see in our religion. Would diversity mean recognition of the other also as other? That's another question. I'm not going into depth with this, but I want you to stay with this question. As I've noticed that in most cases when people dialogue, they try to find common ground, and they often do not reach a point where they say, you know what, this is not me, and I don't have much in common, but we can still live together. Now, you know, it's not always that we found similarity, so let's celebrate that we are all the same. No, we're not the same, and yet we can respect, and yet we can love. Religion today is less and less organized, especially young students, you would know. Religion is less and less organized, and religion is less and less defined. So that is why probably many charismatic and many hybrid religious expressions are finding more space in our current times. This example that I just gave about lack of or lower organization of religion will help us see what has been also happening to Islam. Islam has also been more decentralized and hybrid day after day, with local and more radical and zealous groups forming in most parts of the world. And they're acting in various ways, including militant ways. And that's part of the problem, of course, that I described. Now, let me conclude. People will always be religious. People will always be religious. We are rational beings who ask questions. And many of us ask difficult questions that have no clear or immediate answer. Therefore, because we are people who ask questions on the deeper issues, diversity will follow because of our questions and because of what the questions will lead to. These questions could be a blessing if religion, as a set of questions, develops into answers that humble the human being. If they lead us into that humility, that if they lead us to goodness, in the example of our Lord, in our faith. If it doesn't lead to these questions, and if it doesn't lead into the humbling experience of the human being, then religion cannot be a blessing. It will only be a curse. And I thank you.
Dr. Haidostian will take questions now for the next 20 minutes or so. And I welcome you. If you have a question, just come up to this mic here or that one right over there. So who would like to be the first?
Make it easy, huh?
We had lots of good questions at our breakfast and our lunch today in the intimate group. This is a little less intimate, could be more intimidating, but there must be some of you who would like to step forward. Please, Vincent, come over here, Vincent. Or Dr. Smiles, I should say, right?
Vincent is just fine. I was interested with the way that you ended your lecture, and by the way, thank you, Dr. Haidostian, for a wonderful lecture.
Thank
you. That you essentially said that people are endemically religious. They'll always be religious. You're not going to get rid of this. But there are those in the modern world who say, well, actually, that's exactly what we need to do. That, in fact, religion is the curse of humankind. And that really we should just go with scientific knowledge. Science, after all, is measurable and testable. With science, we can work out pretty much everything. From the Big Bang right up until now, we'll just solve all the problems with science. I'm not personally of this point of view, but I would love to know what your response would be to those who are of that persuasion.
Thank you for the question. I highly regard something called subjectivity. If we are rational beings, we are also subjective beings. About science, I would say the following. Science is a change factor. Science itself changes. I would liken science to a ladder. Religion, that is a ladder which we climb. Religion is the one that gives you the energy to go up the ladder. I would answer it this way. The ladder is important. We need to go up in many ways and so on. But we need the heart. We need the energy. We need the setting of the goal to go up. And that's that would be closer to my definition of religion. Hope that answers. All right, students, get ready. We're starting from somewhere, and then we'll come to this.
In your work there in Lebanon, do you find young people interested in understanding religious diversity? Because obviously the politics is so marred by religious differences, and yet among the young people, is there an interest?
One of the points I was making, the point, whatever the number, by the way, did you find where I was? The third one on the first row. Thank you for that. That was what? A sign of what? I know it. Thank you for that as well. Okay, now, one of the points I made was a sad, maybe more than one was sad, but one of the sad points is the following. In my experience, I noticed that the ones who are talking a lot about religious diversity are the ones who really don't care about religion. So they're using their carelessness about their religion as a way of describing their acceptance of the other. What I need is the Christian who remains a Christian, a faithful one, and goes into dialogue and acceptance and solidarity with the Muslim or the Jew. It's not a big deal to forget about your religion and then celebrate that we are all together. The challenge is when you are in your faith system, and your faith system allows you or empowers you to go the other way. Unfortunately, the majority who show interest in the young people are the ones who put behind their religious tradition. I don't think this is the need of the world. This is not where conflict is. The real challenge and the real conflict is where you are part of your system, and yet you take steps and move towards the other. Thank you.
Maybe this will get students talking a little bit, but this harks back to something we talked about at dinner, and something that you mentioned just now that struck me. At St. Ben's and St. John's, about 60% of our students are entering classes are Catholic. So we have a large population of students who aren't Catholic. As a president, and I don't know if Michael experiences this as well, there is more tension directed at us by the Catholics who have different opinions about how we should be Catholic. But the Lutherans and the other Protestants and the Muslims, who are our other predominant religions, seem content that we're expressing our Catholicism and our Benedictinism in a way that welcomes everyone and supports everyone, but it's the Catholics that have a hard time agreeing on how we should be Catholic. And I'm wondering if you could help us with that.
Good. Yeah, again, I was also referring, the point I was raising on the internal one, that we always talk about these others. That's the easy part. At some level, I see behind our complaints a certain sense of threat to our notion of comfort and the system we are comfortable with. We feel threatened if we don't see it out there. And I think that's the reason. Now, what's the solution? Not that there is a solution to this, but I think understanding the issue, understanding the problem is important. We come with a preconceived idea of what it is to be Catholic or to be whatever you are. And then when you see that the institution is not promoting that perspective of Catholicism and so on, becomes a threat. We should recognize that this is our conception, our preconception of Catholicism. Like any religious, if religious has to do with subjectivity, then we should start from there. Religion is not the traditions and the laws alone. They contribute to it. But religion is not a set of things, like, I read from Gibran. It's not 10 things. If I see it, I'll call you Catholic. If I don't see it, I won't call you Catholic. If religious expression is a subjective expression, yes, with lots of concrete issues, right? History and traditions and so on. But those are not the key issues. Now, the difficult part in your case, I would say, is that this discussion you're having on your campus, Catholicism has around the globe, which makes it dynamic but not easy, because then you're participating in a global discussion without even recognizing that you are part of a global Catholic internal discussion and sometimes debate and so on. But I would focus on that subjectivity issue. As we might not want to hear it, I may not want to hear it about my own system, but I should be humbled by the fact that I'm so limited in my religious understanding as well. Now, how many of us, I'm saying it here, can I say it within my own society? That, you know what, there are areas where I feel very strong, very confident, and then there are areas where I feel really a bit weak. I think it needs humility. Any dialogue, by the way, needs humility. Any dialogue needs humility. The notion of dialogue means that there are things I know, and then there are open areas for discussion. Religion is not dogma. Dogma is to support religious expression, not to serve. We don't serve dogma. We serve God. Now, we serve God through dogma. We serve God through worship, through action in the world, through doing works of justice, through doing good works of whatever sort, through the study of the word, and so on and so forth. But who are we serving? What are we serving? These would be the types of questions I would ask.
Hello again.
Hello.
I actually wanted to ask about, on the more political side, why you think, in your perspective, have we seen this apparent increase in division within the religious communities in the Middle East, and what's happened to sort of pan-Arab nationalism, or movements that were more secular in a way back in the 60s and 70s?
Mm-hmm. I'll start with the easy part, the whole world, and then I'll go to the... Look what's happening to the whole world. We're pretending, and I know we touched upon something like that at dinner. We're pretending that now that we have easy communication means globally, now that we have easy access to sources of knowledge and facts that we describe as knowledge, and because we can travel, because we can see the whole view, because on your smartphone you can actually recognize every single star, right? You study the universe, I mean, it studies it for you. So you're very close to getting the whole picture. On the one hand, the problem with this modern trend and reality is that we are coming up with a fake confidence, and including fake confidence in something called science and findings, inventions, innovations. So on the one hand, there's a world which is living in a fake dream, thinking that we've got it all together. He's got the whole world in his hand. Now, we can say it about ourselves. Okay, so this is part of it. I did the world now. Let me do the Middle East. Part of the world is reacting, if I talk religion and civilization, part of the world is reacting in a very fanatic way to the uncertainties created by the new world. Part of the world is reacting negatively. Part of the world is feeling there's something wrong in the world and we're not safe. Boy, I'm losing the ground on which I stood. The first time I went to seminary, I think it was the first course or something, when they talked about the Pentateuch, I knew Moses wrote it, but then when they told me, yeah, but Moses could be a school of thought. What do you mean Moses is a school of thought? How about you, my teacher? How about you? Maybe you're not a person either. Shaking of the foundations. So with all these realities, part of the world is feeling that we're losing the ground on which we stand. What does that do? That leads you to withdraw. That leads you to limit the boundaries of your ideas and of your experiences. And you start to ideologize, you create some ideology, and then you create a place for yourself, where you have a back, where you have your foot on something, your back to something, and so on, and then you're facing this world that's going crazy. I'm trying to describe, the impact of globalization on some societies. This also hit Islam. This is on the level of civilization and other things and so on. Parallel to this are political realities. After the first Cold War, because we're just starting the second, after the first Cold War was over and the Soviet system collapsed, the whole geopolitical system of the Middle East and the Arab countries and so on changed gradually. It's a new world order, or was supposed to be a new world order. Now we're going to the older version of things, I think, probably. So the geopolitical issues also hit hard. Don't you believe that people look for meaning? We look for meaning in life. I know we don't look like it, but we look for meaning. Do you agree with me, students? People often think that the young people are not interested in meaning. How can someone be human and not be interested in meaning? We don't show it, but every one of us, every one of you is interested in meaning. So where are they going to find meaning in things that are moving right and left? There's nothing stable. So that's leading into fanaticism. They're finding satisfaction in the narrowest of things, the easiest, the smallest. And that's called radicalism, fanaticism. And then put some weapons in the hands of those people, you're done.
First, thank you for sharing your time with us this evening. I was just curious about, in your study of religious diversity in the Middle East, I was wondering if you could talk about if you saw that the Gulen movement had any effect in the region and kind of what
Which movement?
The Gulen movement, and what kind of effect you saw that having in the region of the Middle East.
I didn't see, I'm not aware of any clear impact,
Okay.
actually. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious.
But, yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
So I'm from Moldova, which is a former Soviet Union republic. And in Moldova, the majority of the population is Eastern Orthodox.
Yes.
And growing up and living there, like, I was not aware, I mean, I was aware about other religions, but I had no education about them. And I did not really care about it either. And when I moved here, like, it's a big problem here, religion. And a lot of people have different religions. And, like, now I feel like it's harder to find the truth for people, but like living back home, everybody, they just know, like 90% of the population, they know they're Eastern Orthodox and they don't go to church, but they believe in God and they know their religion. So I don't like, do you think it is better to live in a country where there is religion diversity or where there is one church predominant?
I like your question. You used a nice word, and the word was home. Allow me, everyone else, now I'm talking to her. I would advise you to focus on home first. Not last, but first. Home is your foundation. I wouldn't advise anyone who comes from systems which are more or less uniform. I wouldn't advise them to say, oh, now everyone at home thought we were right. Oops, I went to Minnesota and I realized that, should I make a political mistake here? I went to Minnesota and I realized that the Lutherans think that Lutheranism is right there. You could also use it for Catholicism, by the way, right? Obviously. I would start with home. Number one, I would consider that what was home for me, that is the level of comfort, the support, and so on, that is the first on which you stand. But there comes a time when you also visit other people's homes. You bring what you learn into your home. You contribute to your home. You don't physically need to go. Huh? Identity-wise, home is an identity at this point. So I would not want to look negatively at societies which are uniform. But if it is a home, and then you leave home, what you're bringing back or sending back to your home, this is a journey of growth, I'm saying, in a sense. And I wouldn't compare on a truth level at this point in this discussion. My home is my home. Your home is your home. They're different homes, but start with your home. That's the ground on which you build everything else. This would be my short advice. Otherwise, this world is a very confusing place, and our minds do not have the capacity to handle what you were describing, unless the home is really the basis.
Before I request one last question from the audience, and I do want to tell you that Professor Haidostian would be happy to stay for a while afterwards to
4:45.
to meet with you if you'd like to come up and speak with him. But before requesting one last question, public question, I'd like to thank my colleague, Dr. John Armajani, for introducing me to Professor Haidostian. And I'm just so grateful, not only to him, but of course to you, and to our co-sponsors, by the way, Brandon Woodard agreed to have the Intercultural and International Student Services Department co-sponsor with our J. Phillips Center, and Joe Rogers agreed to have the Department of Global Education, or the Center for Global Education, be a co-sponsor. And I want to invite all of you to become more involved with the J. Phillips Center. We have an active group of students, and I invite you to join them and participate with us in any number of events or trips to houses of worship around our state. But especially, I want to thank you so much. It's been an honor, it's been a pleasure, and we wish you nothing but the very best as you go forward with a very enlightened and enlightening message.
Thank you.
One more question. Anyone? It can be over there, too. Here it comes. Good, thank you.
You talked about beginning this dialogue and how it's currently happening at the top with the major political leaders of today. How do you then start to move it down to the streets? You talked about bringing it into the schools and the churches, but how does that conversation spark? What's your call to action, so to speak?
One of the uniting factors, not to say dialoguing, let's put aside, is one of the most humbling, one of the most unifying, one of the most satisfying things in life ever is called service. When we discuss together, it's good. We dialogue, it's good. We learn from each other, it's good. But when we serve together, serve others together, that's where I think the grassroots change. When you and I serve them together, and when we empty ourselves together for them, there's much more growth, and much more learning and acceptance of each other than there's in anything else. The world, as I said, needs many positive examples. It needs projects of that sort. Not that your group, your type would go and serve someone, but then your type, your group, with other types, other groups, to serve a third group. I mean, if I were to run the world, of philanthropy and religion, I don't know, whatever, I would have constructed a system of this sort. A new form of internship, if you like, new form of community service of that sort.
Thanks again for your inspiration.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.